Hello everyone, welcome back to Altengrad city in City Skylines. Today I would like to continue building on the side of the river where we did the grand square last time with all the government buildings and the big shops and hotels. We will move further upstream and complete the end of the very old bridge connecting all the city parts together. It's going to be a place where we will use some of the old Renaissance and Baroque buildings once again to build not only the area at the end of the bridge, but also a nice looking market square. And just like last time, after we are done with today's building, we will revisit the farmlands around the city. So let's go. We are going to start with doing some trams and really old buildings. Now, in the rest of the city, almost in the rest of the city, we usually do the tram tracks by building a single network so that both tracks in both directions are going parallel. But let's do something more interesting in here because we are going to place some really old buildings, so it might be a good opportunity to maybe split the directions for the tracks and let them go to just some different ways, if only for like a very short length. Anyway, this is probably going to be the longest uncut, unedited footage that I ever used in any of my videos because I already tested this out on the live stream, then I just demolished everything and built it again kind of quickly. So what am I doing here? I am placing a tower, kind of like an old-looking tower, bridge tower, which also serves as a gatehouse because it has that, the gate down below. So maybe back in the day, this used to be part of the old city walls, or maybe not. Maybe it was just a lone tower in a row of some buildings, and it's just something that's usually placed at the end of these very old bridges. We also have a tower on the other side, so why not here? Now, all of these buildings that I'm going to be using are usually the Renaissance or Baroque structures made by Titan, and we are slowly going to just transition from these into the more recently built structures in a couple of blocks that we are going to do later. But these specific blocks, I really want to make them very messy looking without any clear geometry on the street line or something like that, because that's usually how it's done. Or these buildings obviously have been built over much longer time periods than the more modern quarters of the city. Okay. So you can already see how exactly I'm going to go with these tracks. And one direction is going to go through the tower, through the gatehouse, and the opposite direction is going to go between the buildings below the bridges, the connecting bridges between the buildings. Now, those are something that I downloaded a long time ago, but after I finished building the very old town of the city. So I never had an opportunity to place them anywhere, but I really knew that I want to because they just look very cool and it's just a very interesting element to place. Not really to use it all the time in the city, or maybe, whatever. Maybe over some canals, that might be interesting. But in here, it just feels absolutely perfect to do that. So as I was saying, this is going to be usually, these buildings are usually going to be built using Renaissance and Baroque buildings in kind of a messy blocks. So if, for example, in here, I'm using this block to kind of transition between the street level, directly on the waterfront, and up here on the same level as the tracks are. And I also built like a small bridge there to connect to some of the places that we built recently, or actually a long time ago. Now, this entire area in Altengrad was probably changed a lot, in the recent years. Definitely in the recent years, but also, a long time ago as well. So in the recent years, I suppose that at the same time when the parliament buildings were built, and they might not be all that super old, or just the government buildings that we have nearby, then the project for the waterfront was also completed, and it probably saw some changes to the bridge area in here, the old bridge area, and all kinds of these little details around this place. So for example, this kind of a wider road that's going to the river, that's probably not been there. There probably used to be just some kind of a riverbank, maybe not even with any quay or retaining walls, right? So this is mostly new stuff, and it's kind of clearly divided in Altengrad as well. Like I said, it's made using that wider road, and these roads that are going to be going between these old buildings are going to be much narrower. Now, also, all these kinds of different levels are going to be connected using stairs. I'm going to do the stairs right here. And I really like doing these kinds of stairs, by the way, especially the retaining walls around them, and then kind of just covering all of these holes between the walls and stairs with some either grass, in this particular case grass, or also some pavement. So this place, I really played with it, and it kind of took me a long time, but it's just something that we haven't really done lately in Altengrad, especially these Renaissance buildings. I haven't used them in ages, really. So this was very refreshing, something different to do. And this is going to be, let me think, but yeah, this is going to be the last place in the city. Not necessarily this episode, but this place is going to be the last place in the city where I'm going to place these old Renaissance buildings. Maybe the Baroque buildings might appear somewhere else, and maybe some of those Renaissance buildings I'm gonna place here and there just to fill some not that important blocks to have more variety of buildings. But the truly old place of the city, or just generally old places in the city, are going to be done by this episode, okay? So the city center, the very old town, definitely got quite big, but we must also think about just finishing the city. It's not really possible to just continue building with these kinds of styles forever, because I would never be able to finish the city. So I do get some comments from time to time saying that I should build, I don't know, more museums, more operas, or all kinds of landmarks and stuff, but that's usually just done mostly in the city, and if I really wanted to just place these kinds of landmarks more, then I would need to increase the size of maybe the downtown as well. So I would need to even destroy some of the more modern parts of the city to make way for that, and I would be just constantly pushing away the edges of the city, and also pushing away the really completion of the city itself. So that's really not something that I want to do. And I even done I wrote the community post here on this channel that I mentioned in the last video of Altengrad, where I kind of explained where I want to go with this series, and some like mid-term plans, I suppose, or medium-term plans. And I think that after today's episode, we are still looking at some 10 to 12, maybe more episodes of Altengrad in the 1930s before we can just advance in time. So yeah, some more 10 to 12 episodes where I'm just going to be wrapping up the city pretty much. I do have a couple more projects that I do want to use to just fill the downtown pretty much. We haven't finished, for example, the main train station, so that's one project. And there are some gaps closer to the city center that we need to fill. But for example, on this side of the river, most of the videos that are going to be, well, actually all of the videos that are going to be focused on this side of the river will deal with the edges. Now, that's not saying that they are going to be just some low density expansion, no, definitely not, but they are definitely going to create the edges of the city. I have some couple of interesting projects to really do here. I think of this part of the city as the modern quarter. Well, not exactly this part near the bridge, but the government buildings and all that, that's definitely the more modern part of the city. And I would even like to, do something like that. But let's not talk about that anymore, because I'm pretty sure I would just spoil some things if I continued. So what am I going to do in here? Now, I already placed a couple more of these blocks. So for example, forming the line here right on the waterfront, and also more buildings in the line where the tower is. So it's going to form like an interesting looking obstacle, let's say, visual obstacle between the rest of this area and the river, and the tram tracks are really nicely going to cut into it. I was also using the node controller, for example, on some of those split tracks, and where the tracks are splitting, so that it's much smoother and it's really going to look good. You're going to see a very nice looking cinematic at the end, where I'm just going to do like a low angle shot from the perspective of the bridge, how the trams are just gonna be going through the gate and through those through that alley between the houses, and it's really looking very good. By the way, I haven't really recorded the cinematics with the new trams, but you could have seen that I posted in the community post that I did switch all the trams in Altengrad for a new version, because these I was not exactly satisfied with, and recently there is a much better looking tram in the workshop, and I really loved it. I absolutely fell in love with it. It's perfect fit for Altengrad, so I decided to use it absolutely everywhere, and I can already say it's looking really good in the first person as well. So, stay tuned for the first person rides, I guess. But yeah, for these cinematics, I still used the old ones. Now, we are going to do the actual topic of today's video, probably, and that's going to be the market square. Now, since this is pretty much going to be the last place in the city where I can do some kind of a very old-looking buildings, maybe not like super old, but kind of old, then I decided to really use some of the hidden gems that I had. So, for example, that corner red building made by Raccoon, I think, that's an absolute perfect fit. It's required, at least, when you look at the building, it's kind of clear that it needs to have the proper road alignment all around it. So it's not exactly like a 90-degree corner building, but it's close. It's, I don't know, something like 60-degree maybe, but these kinds of buildings are absolutely amazing, because most of the buildings that you download from the workshop, I talk about this all the time, they are usually for the 90-degree corners, because that's what's going to be used most of the time. But every couple of times you want to do something slightly different, because not only is that how it's done in real life, but it's just more interesting to really do it. And that's also what I'm trying to do in here with this very nice looking corner building. But again, that's a 90-degree corner building, and we don't really have that in here. So I decided to clip some buildings together, kind of match the colors with the repainter, or the repaint mod, I'm not sure what it's called these days, and form a really nice edge of this square. Now, I'm not really showing it in here, but I also extended some of the road infrastructure, more grids really, around this area, and I'm not really sure if I filled it with some more just filler buildings, but I think I did. Yeah, I'm just not showing it in the time lapse really, because it's something that we have seen many times before, but you're definitely going to see that in the before and after comparison. So this road, this wider road that's going on the side of that very nice corner building, it's probably going to be a very important connection inside the city. So that's going to continue all along the river and eventually just off the map. So I'm already trying to make it wider, even with the buildings, layout of the buildings, and also place some more recent structures around it. So even some of those maybe like 18th or 19th century buildings, maybe even early 20th century block houses as well. Now, I'm just filling these rest of the blocks around here with more of the Baroque buildings, mostly, and this is something we're going to continue with in the next episode, and I think even some other episodes where we're going to be just expanding this area. Not really that much, but a couple of blocks will be needed to still fill here. Now, let's do some detailing on the square itself. So, it's just going to be a huge, well, not really huge, but kind of a big area with pavement. So I need to break it up somehow, use some kind of green detailing is always very nice in these places. So for example, in the corners, I decided to put the planters with some nice trees here. And in front of this red building, some kind of just flowers and bushes, because I don't really want to hide the building from the first person view, because if you think about it, if you, for example, arrive into this area by the tram, that's probably going to be the landmark that you immediately going to notice. So it wouldn't really make sense to just cover it behind a line of trees. Now, since this is a market square, let's actually do the market. So I'm using these kinds of market stalls. I'm not sure what they're called, and I have used them in the city previously, I think, and I'm just going to fill them with some of these props. It's definitely not going to be as detailed as some of the markets that you can see on screenshots on like Twitter or something, but it's going to be looking nice. It's definitely going to be looking nice from the more zoomed out perspective, right? Now, another important thing that I'm doing here are the wires. And since this place is already kind of detailed, more than some other places in the city, I suppose, then I really wanted to pay more attention to these wires and do them a bit with a bit more care, let's say. So instead of using, for example, the railway wires that I'm sometimes using, or recently the Klus wires, which are kind of thicker, well, as thick as, for example, the vanilla wires or all the rest of the wires that I'm using on the roads that are already having wires, then I decided in here to use the wires made by Pevex. And I'm using the single wire version because the tracks are going to split anyway. And I'm also using these catenaries made by the same author because I didn't really want to provide pillars on both sides of these tracks, especially the vanilla pillars, because they are quite massive and they would just kind of destroy this area. And since we have a lot of curves in here, we do need to have like a forest of catenaries or pillars for the catenaries, right? So it only makes sense that we do the slimmer catenaries that we have, right? Or the slimmest, I suppose, the most slim. How do we even say that? Doesn't matter. Now that's done, and we need to do the surfaces. Now, by the way, these catenaries are absolutely perfect because you can also do them like this, mirrored kind of, and especially in that split or merge area, however you want to look at it, it's looking really, really good. Now, I think that I'm actually going to extend, I didn't do it yet, but I am going to extend the wires all the way across the old bridge. I know that when I was building the old bridge, I said that I'm thinking of it as maybe like a, well, not wireless, of course, but, well, actually, yeah, kind of technically wireless, but so the power is going to be brought from the bottom, right, to the trams. But that's kind of a concept that's, I don't know, it's kind of weird, and I suppose it's going to raise a lot of eyebrows if I continue doing that, especially if I'm going to decide to do a first-person ride of this area. And these kinds of thin wires and these particular catenaries, I don't think they are going to look that bad on the old bridge. And maybe I'm even going to detail the old bridge some more later with some statues, for example, or something, definitely some streetlights. So it's just going to be a bit more interesting. It's going to add some necessary detail to it because the bridge is kind of long and it just needs to be a bit more interesting. So let's do the tram lines. And as you could have seen, yeah, there are 2 lines going through this area. It's the same lines that we have seen, yeah, in the previous episode. Those are exactly the same lines because, you know, this is just a continuation of that area. Also, one very important thing is to make this place nicely functional and walkable. So definitely the market area, because that's going to be quite critical to make that look alive, but also these stairs. Now, these particular stairs are probably not going to be used that much because there's nothing on the waterfront. I suppose I could have probably placed some parks, people, generator, maybe. But yeah, that's maybe something that I can do later. Also, some detailing. I did the surfaces, by the way. I did some cobblestone and different kinds of stone, a continuation of the stone on the bridge, and really a lot of surface in here. We have some asphalt on some of that roads, and this kind of different cobblestone, the default one for pavement. So that's really standing out in here, and I really, really like that. And all kinds of stains on that original pavement color on pavement surface, and details, of course, details, benches, and mostly street lights. So that's pretty much, you know, the standard detailing that I'm doing in these kinds of areas. Also trees, especially around that monastery building that I placed there. Now, that's going to be all for that project near the bridge. It's not really like a huge footprint area that we did, but it's kind of more detailed than usual, so, you know, that kind of offsets it, I suppose. But we are going to do the farms, and after we are done placing all these farms, painting all these farms, and especially doing all these, all the edges of these farm fields with the tree lines, this is going to look very good. And I prepared like a special, again, low angle cinematic shot looking into this area from the city, and it's looking really good. I can already somewhat spoil that I started doing these farmlands also on the opposite side of the city, and in there it's just looking amazing when you're gonna do, again, those low angle shots, maybe even from the view of the first person, for example, the tram. then it's looking really good. Now, this kind of technique is not very detailed. Well, it's not detailed at all, right? You're just painting it with the resource painter. That's exactly the same technique that I was using in Rockdale a long time ago. And you're just going to do these kinds of borders with the trees. Now, this is not exactly ideal, what I did there, and I eventually completely switched the trees that I'm using here, because I think that this is the brush. You can probably see it in the time-lapse. I can't really in the editing right now, but I think that's the exact same brush that I'm using in Aurelia for these pine trees. Now, the pine trees are not ideal because they usually have the most volume further up, right? Because well, I'm not sure why, but it doesn't matter. The point is that when you are looking at them, again, from the low angles, they are kind of tall, yeah, but they don't have much volume down on the bottom. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So you can kind of see through the tree lines, and I don't like how tall they are, right? So I eventually decided to just completely get rid of that and just change it for some low trees that are going to start having the leaves. Yeah, I'm going to use mostly the trees with leaves, and that's just going to look much, much better. You will see. You will see. Now, when I was doing this on the live stream, and Chet kind of pressured me into doing something more interesting for this little village. Now, yeah, sure, why not? Because this little village is going to be quite important going further with the series, because I do have some plans for this area. So doing the village maybe slightly larger is it's just going to make it more interesting how we are going to change it in the coming decades. Well, actually well into the future, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I also placed a couple more of these little settlements, like very, very small settlements, here and there, usually on intersections, but it's not really worth mentioning because they are just something you're going to notice in the zoomed out shots, but they're just there to really fill those places. And this is exactly what I was talking about. So I carefully selected a couple of trees, I think like 5 or 6 different kinds, that I'm going to be placing in here. So they are usually low to medium height trees, and they have that thing that I said. So they have the leaves starting all the way from the ground. So that's going to be very critical, and it's going to look very good. I also kind of try to use trees that have all right looking loads. So when I'm going to zoom out, it's not really going to look that bad. Unfortunately, these kinds of trees are not present on the rest of the map, so maybe there might be some visible border between the already existing trees on the map and these. But, these are still, it's going to be fine. Like, it's going to be just fine, really, if you're going to look at the cinematics later. So I also did these edges of the already built areas with maybe even some mixes of the pine trees. So, there's some continuation between what I'm doing here and the detailing that's already done. So this is going to look really, really good. Anyway, there is the transition for that original project of today's video. And yeah, I did eventually build a couple of these more recently built blocks. Especially I finished the one right next to that parliament building, or just the government building. So this place turned out looking really good. I really like it. And it's just been something new, something refreshing, especially on this side of the river with these Renaissance and Baroque old buildings. And the market square is just something that, well, we haven't really done like a big market square in the city. We have built a couple of markets here and there, but this is just something that the city really needed. And I especially like the trams, how they are diverging into these different parts of that block of buildings, into the tower. Oh yeah, this is the shot that I was saying I'm gonna show you. This is something that I really enjoyed watching and recording, how the trams are just going through this place. There are not that many people walking around, but that's definitely going to change because we are going to just add more stuff on this side. So there are even going to be more people walking across the river on the bridge. And yeah, you can even see that some people are using the stairs. So that's quite nice. This tram stop is quite busy because people for some reason insist on switching the lines on this one. So that's why there are a lot of people in here. And like I said, I'm still using the old version of the trams, but I already switched for the new ones. You're not really going to see that in the next episode that much, because next episode is not really going to have tram tracks as the main focus, but you will see them soon enough. This is the shot that I was talking about of the farm fields, and I like this. I like this. I was really afraid of doing the farms project because it's something that I really wanted to not spend that much time with, because it's just the edge of the city. It's something that kind of needs to be there for these kinds of shots, but at the same time, I don't really want to focus on it, right? And this turned out looking just great for this kind of purpose. Absolutely great. I didn't really want to detail it with decals, the farmlands, because I would just go crazy doing that on the rest of the map, and I don't know what else to say about it. It just looks great. It just looks great. And it's going to look especially good from the first-person views, from even lower angle shots than this. But yeah, this just looks good. And I think that the change of trees really, really enabled this kind of view. So, overall, it's looking just good. As always, if you liked today's video, please click the thumbs up button, leave a comment and share, and also subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Big thanks to all the channel members who directly support the channel. If you would also like to become a channel supporter, you can become a channel member through the join button below or the link in the description. In the next episode, we are going to build right next to this area, and we will move up the river again. There we have that modern bridge that's going towards the exhibition center from a couple of episodes back. I would like to build some more old city walls there, just like we did on the opposite side of the city some time ago. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.